Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Terzero.
And this week we watched Mortal Kombat.
Oh my god.
Mortal Kombat! Yeah. What a treat. What a little treat. I had never seen that original Mortal Kombat.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. So it was on fresh eyes for me. I mean, come to find out, I really haven't seen much of anything. I feel like every episode I'm like, I've never seen any of these.
I mean, I'm also the same, so I'm very happy that we're doing this because, this is one that I did watch, and I watched a couple of times, and I loved it because, I was a little gamer girl growing up, so I used to go to the local liquor store and, play Mortal Kombat there. I was never good at fighting games. Fighting games were never my thing. Yeah. It was just button mashing, but I loved playing that. I was, always Sonya, right? Always the girl, always whoever. But yeah, so I watched this movie then, and I was like, hell yeah. So when they announced the remake, I was like, fucking cool. We'll get to talk about this on this podcast. And I had not seen the movie probably since that time frame. And man, oh man.
I mean, I have some stuff to say about it, but I'm honestly way more excited to talk about the 1995 one than the new one. But that is what it is. And similarly, I'm also a button mash queen. I have no idea how to play those games. Any fighting games like that, like Tekken or Street Fighter or Mortal, any of those side-scrolling fighter games, literally it's just I'll learn one special. I remember in Tekken, it was one Yoshimitsu special that I was really good at. And then I was I'm a master. I don't need to learn anything other than this. And I'll just keep hitting them with my sword. And it does not matter.
Cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was more of a Beat Mania and Bobble Puzzle girl. That's kind of what Metal Slug. I loved Metal Slug.
Oh my god, I was obsessed with Metal Slug. Are you kidding me? Metal Slug was synonymous with pizza for me, or Round Table Pizza, because of the pizza place in Prunedale where I grew up. It had the Metal Slug machine. What for me, an absolute treat.
It was The Simpsons and the Pizza Hut that was also still had the salad bar.
Oh fuck yeah.
So also air hockey, I went to the arcade basically twice a week from when I was 10 to 18.
Yeah.
So it was good times. Ooh, maybe we'll just start a once a month episode talking about these old games.
I mean, I'm down. I'm so ignorant to a lot of I mean, as a consumer, I really like some of the game. That one game with the the thing it spins and you have to jump on it. Anyways, that game, that's me describing any knowledge of any games I have for the most part. But yes, 100%. I think it would be fun and very silly. But Mortal Kombat.
Should we do it?
Yeah, let's just fucking rage. That's enough of an intro. That's all you guys get. You don't need any more.
Yeah, we're ready to talk about this.
Yeah. So just buckle up and Mortal Kombat. Martial artist master Liu Kang is haunted by the dream of his brother being killed by Shang Tsung in the legendary Mortal Kombat tournament, a secret fighting tournament held once every generation to keep the Outworld realm from invading Earth. After 10 consecutive victories, Outworld is allowed to conquer Earth, but don't worry, that will never happen. JK, they've won the last 9 tournaments, so this one is kind of important. With the tournament just days away, Shang Tsung lures the remaining heroes of Earth, Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade, to a boat that will take them to the tournament grounds, where they are finally greeted by Raiden, the protector of the Earth realm, and filled in on some of the details. With that, the battle begins. Kind of.
After a rocky start, Liu, Sonya, and Johnny become friends and subsequently win their first matches. After getting some hot intel from Princess Kitana, Sung's adopted daughter, the gang heads off to spy on the enemy, learning more about their plans and the tournament itself, but is quickly found out. As they make their hasty retreat, Raiden tells the group they must conquer their fears in order to win the battle ahead. After a few quick fights, Sung kidnaps Sonya in an attempt to win Mortal Kombat. Luckily, her friends follow them into the Outworld, where they are met by Kitana, who gives them a lot of background information and takes them to the place Sonya is being held. A fight happens with Kang and Sung. Kang wins and reconciles with his brother's spirit, and Earth is saved from Mortal Kombat.
So here's my big takeaway from this movie. This movie knew exactly what it wanted to be, and it stuck to the prompt. And I think that's my favorite part of it, where it's like the dialogue, trash. The narrative, kind of holy, but who cares? Like the one-liners, punch. Like it's silly for the sake of being silly. It's very clearly like this is based off of an existing franchise, and this is like there's a level to me where it feels like it could be sponsored by like Pizza Hut or like Pizza Hut presents Mortal Kombat. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's very clearly structured in this way that is like, this is obviously based, like, you know what I mean? It's very specific. It's just very specific. It knows the prompt. It sticks to the prompt. And for that reason, I'm in. No, but for that reason, like, honestly, it was fun. It was just fun and silly. And like, obviously there are moments of just like trashy, problematic, just like, oh, well, I'm
like
just looking at her.
anytime Johnny Cage opens his fucking mouth.
I'm just looking at her boobs. Or like, wow, he's going to be late to breakfast. Or like, just silly shit. You know what I mean? But even within this world of nonsense, which this movie is kind of a world of nonsense, not who cares, but like, it feels of the world, even these like little throwaway problematic pieces, because like, we're not buying any of this as any sort of real thing. It's a cartoon, essentially. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Obsessed.
So, I feel like a lot of video games that are made into films always are awful, or like they're trying to make out of a story out of something that's nothing, right? Or they try to make something way more important, or they try to make a movie that is like Super Mario Brothers that has nothing to do with being the Super Mario Brothers and the whole thing, right? So this movie, like you said, is not that. They knew exactly what the game was, and they took a lot of the sets from the game too, and were like, cool, we're gonna have this here. Like, the fights literally felt like you are like, it felt like playing the video game, you know? And then like, even like the dialogue, like there's very little dialogue in the Mortal Kombat games, right? But they were like, okay, we have to say this and we have to say this. Like, it felt like they had like a checklist of locations and lines that they had to say.
Yeah.
And they did that. They just threw that in there, and then like, okay, great, let's weave a narrative around this. So for doing that, I think it was, like you said, just very fun, very cartoonish, very the whole thing, right? There is a lot of male posturing in all of these fights. Like, it was just all so performative and so hilarious.
And arguably, I mean, that's the game, right? It's like the ooh, like, ooh, like I'm gonna like those sounds. It's just that's Mortal Kombat, like just grunts,
and then like even like, I love how bad the extras in the back of these fights were, because they, you know, like when you're playing the game and there's like the extras in the background, right? They're always like, yeah. Like the people in the background were exactly those video game characters, and that was just so silly and so fun and so like so awful. It just like, it worked. Like, if you turn off your brain and just watch it like this, it's silly, it's stupid, it's fun, it's the whole thing.
And truly, like the way they introed it too, when it's like Jackson, Sonya running through it, it's just like, I got your like line, character name. Oh, other character name. I'm like, it's very clear, like, we're trying the only reason we're here is to introduce these characters. Boom, we're going. But it's so it's just so bulky and like unrefined. It just feels like, oh, fucking you are telling me exactly what this movie is going to be in these first few seconds. Cool, I'm on board. Like, no need to say any
movie,
more.
Like, the whole premise is predicated on violence, right? The whole video game is just beating the shit out of each other, right?
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat is literally there in the title. So you should not expect anything profound from that. I feel like the next one had a moment where they could have done that, and I was pretty stoked on that, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So you can't really expect a lot. And of course, violence is going to be glorified. And like, I do want to like really get into like some of the characters and some of the weird shit about the tournament itself. First, I also want to acknowledge that this film is fucking white. Like, this film is so white. And it is very gross in that aspect, because like
Yes.
you're seeing these characters that are supposed to like, you know, be doing martial arts, or be like, you know, Raiden is supposed to be like a fucking god of thunder and lightning or whatever, and he's a white dude, you know,
It's just Christopher Lambert, some white actor.
Also, I have some bullshit to say about Raiden in these two movies. Raiden
Yeah.
sucks. Fucking hate Raiden. So yeah, where should we start?
I want to start with Sonya because
Okay.
I think largely, obviously, there's a lot to be said about like she's there to be a sex object to some degree, but I do think that this movie does a really good job at doing some sort of redemptive, like, don't underestimate this person. Just in terms of like the whole Kano subplot where like he's leading her, he's like essentially like gaslighting her into the tournament by being like, oh, just follow me, but I'm not going to pretend, like, I'm going to pretend like I don't know that you're following me, but I'm really just leading you into this trap situation. But it's like this constant like objectification, and obviously he's like this abusive piece of shit. I mean, granted, not a lot to say, but just like he's really hot and it sucks and I hate it. It just really hurts my brain. But the final moment they give her with him when they're fighting, and this whole time he's a big piece of shit, literally like just killing anybody who gets in his way. He says, give me a break, when she has his neck between her knees and she just says, okay, and snaps his neck. I was like, that's fucking cool. Because it was like, I know this movie isn't very deep and it's not trying to be deep. There isn't a lot of like feminist intent behind some of these moments, but there is a level of like, in this moment of weakness and vulnerability on Kano's end, where he is in a position like when he's not in a position of power, where he's been presented as this character who holds all the cards, who makes the choices, is an ethical nightmare, like is a monster. He's just doling out death left and right. In this moment, he kind of asks for mercy in this way, where he's like, oh, well, now that I'm vulnerable, cut me some slack. Like, come on. And her response to it is no,
is
heart.
No hesitation, just like
no hesitation.
Boom, sure, I'll give you a break. I'll break your fucking neck.
And you couple that with the fucking just the silly joke of it. I'm like, amazing.
That's literally the only part of her and her character that I liked, because literally everything else was like, at first I was like, okay, like fine, sure, and then I was like, oh, cute, you turned your pants into cutoffs, cool, I'm here for that. So like her turning the pants into cutoffs and then like killing Kang without hesitation, fucking cool, tight, I'm here for this. However, everything else around her, like, she doesn't make a single choice for herself. It's all just reactionary, or, you know, like men are baiting her to like, they're kind of deciding her fate around her, and she doesn't really have a choice in any of that. She has like literally she has no agency in any of it. And like, she's the only one when they get on the boat that doesn't know that they're going to Mortal Kombat, or what the fuck that is, right? And they're all just like telling her what to do, and she keeps saying, I don't want your help, don't do this for me, especially to Johnny, who's gross. And he's just like, but instead everybody just kind of like doesn't listen to that and just keeps calling her baby or darling.
Yeah.
And so like, and also her last name is Blade, right? So it's like, ooh, like she's sharp, she's, you know, she's edgy, she's all of this, but like, I feel like that was just an attempt to try to make her badass. Like, I mean, like on the video games part, right? Because this is what this is made off
that's
of,
more
like,
of a conversation of like the sellability of sex, and by sex we mean women's bodies as objects for like the purposes of a video game. Yeah.
But her character is based on what she is to men, which is a way to fulfill their maleness. Yes. So like Johnny and Sung and Shang Tsung are essentially the same, right? Like they both want her body, and they both talk about that a lot. And when Johnny just patronizingly builds her up, while what's his name, just like patronizingly grinds her down. So like Johnny tells her things like, oh, I'm going to protect you, it's okay, like, it's a guy thing, whatever. And she's like, I don't fucking need you. And then the second that, like, he's in any sort of danger, she's like, oh, he's like, no, I'm, you can handle this, it's okay, you know, because he's a piece of shit. And then, like, he goes after Goro trying to say, like, oh, Sonya, I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this because I don't want you to have to face him. And she's there, like, trying to, like, talk him out of it. And she's like, no, don't you fucking dare do this to me. And he's like, no, I'm doing this for you, baby. He's just super patronizing to her the whole time. And it's, like, framed as, again, supposed to be cute. And then Shang Tsung, he's, like, obsessed with her, and he just keeps, like, and the reason he is obsessed with her, we don't know throughout the whole film. Like, what does he tell Kang? He says, like, don't hurt her. I only want her to be manipulated or humiliated, right? And he just keeps saying, oh, my darling, here's this for you. Here's that, right? And it turns out the whole reason why he wanted her in the tournament is so at the very end he could challenge her and then have an easy win for Mortal Kombat, because he never once thought that she was capable or anything. She was going to be the easy win, and he was going to be able to take Earth down through a woman, a defenseless, helpless woman that he kidnaps and just, like, throws her into this, like, over-sexualized, like, barefoot, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that, but she's fucking barefoot and like, tied up and stuff. And I was just like, cool, like, this is what you want. This is your choice. Awesome.
Yeah.
But
I do think that it was, like, just a general play on character that Shang Tsung did set this whole trap, because this is, like, the 10th victory and therefore will be, like, the final win. So there's an assumptive, like, well, she's a woman, so she's weak. Get her here. I'll fight her, and I'll obviously win because she's a woman. At that point, I'll take over the Earth. Their souls are mine. Yum, 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 yum. Which, I mean, again, Shang Tsung sucks, so that's just like a play on character. But I do think, like, just the coupling of, like, Liu Kang and what is Johnny's last name?
Johnny Cage. I remember that because I have a note saying, what if Nick Cage played Johnny Cage?
Oh, would be obsessed. What a chaotic move that would be. I don't think Nick Cage is pretty enough to be Johnny. Johnny Cage is supposed to be, like, pretty boy.
He's
not to say
be,
that
but
Nick Cage
I'm
is...
okay with him, like, not doing that. I'm okay, like, I would be okay with that.
But see, to me, I liked Johnny Cage because of just the aloofness that they wrote his character. Because, like, yes, he's patronizing. Yes, he's, like, fuckboy, misogynist. Like, that's just his whole deal. Outside of that, I just like that the character was so clownish and buffoon. He was just a buffoon. Like, and that was the whole joke, is, like, he's there to be the butt of the joke at every turn, where he's like, I'm going to say something confidently, and everyone's like, no, you're wrong. He's like, oh, whoops. Or, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, he's supposed to be the dumb, pretty one, which I liked just as, like, a turn, because, yes, he's being this objectifying crumb-ass dude, but at the end of the day, this guy's really dumb. Like, he's a buffoon. He's a clown. He's, like, nobody takes this person seriously. And I think even the action surrounding him, there's, like, a vainness, obviously, because he's an actor. That's his whole backstory. But, like, even after the fight with fucking Scorpion and he drops his headshot signed, like, XOXO Johnny Cage, I'm just like, amazing. Incredible. Literally perfect. Because it is just, again, a play to character. And I know a lot of that has to do with just this being a video game movie. But even then, it's like, even if, like, yes, he sucks. Yes, he's a misogynist. Yes, he is trash. But he's the joke. He's a joke. He's not a real character. He's like,
still rewarded for all of it, though. And
I guess that's true.
He is the one that Sonya doesn't get to save herself in any of this. She has to be saved, and then she is literally made she's damseled and then made a trophy for Johnny, because Johnny did the good thing, right? And then Johnny also he's the one out of everybody, and, like, Liu Kang doesn't get it, where it's just he makes the choice and he says, like, it's like, I made a choice, it's our tourney, or it's our tournament or whatever, and he's like, and we're gonna fight it. And he's, like, the one that understands Mortal Kombat, and he's the one that, like, has that wisdom, even though he's, like, a piece of shit, and he gets the attaboy from Raiden, right? He just figures it out, and he's like, he gets that. He got too much credit, is what I think. He got too much credit.
And yeah. And to be fair, I mean, granted, almost any movie, even if the pretty white guy, even if he is the clown and the butt of the joke, at the end of the day, he still gets more credit than any non-cishet white person in that story.
He also has more lines than anybody, too. And he's, like, taught martial arts by some old white dude. And is, like, his whole reason for going is, like, people don't believe that he's the best. And they don't believe that he is so good at all of this. And he's like, oh, my God, I have to go prove everybody wrong. I have to go do this. And then he just, like, constantly tries to put everybody else down, and yeah, it makes him like he's the butt of the joke and everything, but because he's rewarded in the way that he is at the end, it like makes it seem like it's okay. And I just really don't like him. And it's also super gross that he's like, I can smell Katana, she was over here because like that's her perfume, and I was like, you fucking perv. Like, oh my God. Yeah. But I did like that he was often the butt of all of the jokes when like Kang, who like Kang is awesome, he like tells Kang to like take his bags, and he's just like, oh sure, and he takes the money and throws the fucking bags overboard, and it's like, see you later.
Yeah.
You know?
And even in that scene, like the response isn't like, hey, fuck you, I'm ready to fight. It's just like, well, thankfully I didn't ask him to park my car. Like, again, just playing to the aloofness of like, it's just, he's a clown. He's a buffoon. He's a foolish, foolish person. Apparently, he was based off of Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, that
and
tracks.
Apparently, the character was supposed to be a design of Jean-Claude Van Damme, but then the rights were not secured. So this whole persona is supposed to be like pretty boy fighter movie star, which is just Jean-Claude Van Damme. I love the Goro puppet. Was obsessed with.
Goro is very
like,
cute.
You have to love. Like, it was, oh my God. Because, I mean, love a practical set. Like, love a practical moment, right? Mm-hmm. And this thing was just like, like, it's very top heavy. It would, like, Goro would raise their arms, and it was just like, you saw the plastic, like, kind of pulling apart, or, like, the molding a little bit. It was, honestly, it was gorgeous. I'm not going to talk too much shit on it, because at the end of the day, it really looked great. And like those moments where Goro's like gonna fight Kano at the table or something, or be like, I'm the one in charge, and he's trying to look intimidating. It's like fucking Barney trying to say like, I've got a gun. Like, it's just, it's so silly because he looks so silly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I loved it. I mean, again, to me, it completely added to the ambiance of this movie. Because it was, again, it's just like, who fuck, like, am I intimidated? No. Is it cute? Of course. Is it silly? 100%. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Also, I cannot handle when Kano said the line, just like Daddy taught me. I need him to disappear with that line, because that's just too much. It's too much for my brain to handle. I'm like, I don't know who wrote that in there for him, but
it was for you.
It was a lot for me. It's too much for me. Yeah. Oh, and then like when Johnny Cage punches Goro in the crotch.
Yes.
He just like a full split reach back. Like, it just, that is the silliest bullshit thing. And obviously both movies did this pretty heavily, but just kind of the dropping the verbiage of the game, like that was a flawless victory, like just cause like it's in the line, it's just, we must. Or just like when Goro looks over at Shang Tsung and Shang Tsung's just like, finish him, you're like, oh my God, this is so silly. It's just silly, but it's fun. I don't know, I had a great time with this movie.
I really liked watching it, but again,
yes.
there's just these moments where it's like everybody's these caricatures of people, which is fine, but like the women deserved better. Sonya deserved better. Princess Katana is dangerous because she has knowledge and words of encouragement. Like, she's like this dangerous adversary that must be watched, and was adopted by her parents' killer. Okay. And like, I mean, there could have been some cool stuff, but instead it's just her telling Kang like, you could do it. Use the element that gives life, you know, and you're like, okay. And then, if you don't fight with all of your heart, there is no hope. Like, wait, but what about you? What about you? Like, what are you? And then at the end, she also gets paired off with fucking Kang. So it's like Johnny and Sonya walking out, and Katana and Kang walking out, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that felt really silly. And then, like, and Kang, like, I like Kang because, like, he left the Order of Light because he doesn't believe that men fighting decides the fate of the world. Like, even though, like, he grew up in this, like, order that's like, Raiden is everything and we need to win Mortal Kombat and blah. He's like, yeah, whatever. Like, and he left. But, like, the whole time he's also kind of like, he's asking, like, Raiden, like, if you're God, why didn't you protect my brother? Like, why this? And Raiden's like, well, I can't do everything. And then you're like, you've literally done nothing, Raiden. Like, you have done fucking nothing for anybody this whole time. So I thought, like, him questioning Raiden was really cool. And then, like, he had some good lines where he's like, you could look into my soul, but you can't own it, you know? And, like, you know,
name
all
of
these
my
souls
new
and you
album.
still don't have one of your own. Like, I feel sorry for you. And I was like, oh,
burn.
damn, that's good. But then, like, also, he calls out the sexism of Johnny Cage, too. Like, whenever he tries to, like, tell, like, be like, oh, yeah, well, but Sonya and this, he's like, look, you're not actually praising her. This is sexism, and that's stupid. You're doing this because she's a woman and you're attracted to her. And, like, it was just, like, this really subtle call out. But, like, the reason that Kang wins is because he's the only one that's willing to listen to women out of anybody in this entire franchise, because, like, everybody else is just trying to not only dominate each other but also dominate the women, clearly. So I thought that was really cute.
Yeah, that was definitely a nice touch in a movie of a lot of messiness. I think I keep saying that, like, I don't really take this movie seriously, and I want to clarify what that means for me, only in terms of intent. So to me, this movie encompassed all the way through all of its themes, general motifs, general characterizations, all of it, everything in this movie is made in jest. To me, it feels like a caricature of a film. It feels like an intentional clowning of cinema. Does that make sense? And so with that, like, sort of lensed intention, or at least that's kind of the take, when these moments of, like, misogyny happen, or when these, like, characterizations happen, there is a level of me that's like, oh, well, that's obviously not real, because none of, you know what I mean? Not to discredit or take away from, like, what the dialogue is, but the dialogue itself is bad. Like, nothing in this movie, for the most part, is inherently good, apart from some of the fight scenes that are really stylized and, like, cool. But because of that sort of jestful lens that just colors my entire approach to the film, obviously, like, there are these moments of badness, of misogyny, but, like, it's hard for me to even, because in some of these other movies where it is trying to, like, especially this next one, where it's trying to sort of, like, ground this idea in the real world and trying to say, like, these are real people who exist on Earth, and this is the story of that existence of these characters. I feel like this Mortal Kombat was just like, fuck it, this isn't Earth, this is a different planet. Like, nothing's, like, this is all a made up, make believe, far away, nothing real place. Like, and so with that lens, there is a level of me that took, again, not to undermine the critique in general, because I think that, like, if I'm like, well, it's fake, would be a disservice and a complete ridicule of what we're doing here, right? But even outside of that, even those moments of misogyny, I was like, oh, I'm taking note of this. But, like, it feels like not a joke, but it seems like, oh, this isn't real. Does that mean?
I had the complete opposite reaction.
Really?
Because as a woman in gaming, especially growing up as a woman gamer, it was a really awful place for me to be. Yeah. Just being in any sort of proximity to games. I had no female companions that were gamers. When I hung out at the arcades, it was me and, like, 5 dudes, you know, that would always be there. And so, like, you know, and it was always like, oh, yeah, let's fucking talk about this. Or, like, you know, and then it's like, oh, we're talking about wrestling. And then there's China. And then there's this. And it's like, just, like, all of these characters, the way that they worked to further the objectification and enable misogyny, like, to me, like, that was then, those kinds of things were projected onto me. And sure, I wasn't the best gamer or anything, but I was not, in certain games, I was not to be taken as seriously as somebody else, you know? Yeah. And those kinds of comments, those kinds of sexist comments and misogynist comments are things that I heard all of the time because those were perpetuated by these characters that these boys loved, and it was okay, And for me, like, yeah, sure. I mean, this is just a silly film. However, without having women in the film that have agency, and with just having them be there to be objectified and to be sexualized and to be like, to kind of like fight over control of that, that was like, looking at things like this, I can see how damaging that was to me, just being a young woman in that space.
Yeah.
So I think I just have a really different take on that, because this was like directly related to where I was at this time frame, and because of that too, also that internalized misogyny that I put on myself, right? And like was so ingrained in who I was and what I expected of myself and my role. So it's a little bit different for me, I think.
Well, understandably
I totally
so.
get what you're saying. Absolutely.
No, but to that point, that's not an experience that I ever had or ever will have. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, obviously, I'm not going to see this and be like, oh, I know what it's like to be a woman in this space. Or I know, like, for as little of an effect as those comments had, in my opinion, or in my viewing of it, that's because I've never experienced that kind of misogyny or that kind of sort of just generalized abuse in any real way in the real world, because, again, I'm a cis man, so that's never been something that I've had to sort of acknowledge or address or like exist with in any particular space ever in my life, right? So yeah, no, 100%. I 100% know. I get what you're saying 100%. I think.
Yeah, it's just being. It's just you have to be there to nurture and to give guidance and to be pretty. That was their whole thing in this. And then, it's okay for men to be misogynist about it, which is why I liked Liu Kang so much on this, because he was like, look, that's fucked up. And it was really subtle the way that he did that, and his treating of female characters, right? But again, and he wasn't necessarily fighting for Sonya's honor or anything. He was always gonna fuck up Shang Tsung, right? Like that was always his thing. Unlike Johnny, who is like, I have to save her and stuff like that, So I liked his character a lot. But with regard to just how the women were treated and kind of like that mentality of just like, oh well, it's just this movie and stuff like that. Like, okay, yeah, like sure, but like we could have done a little bit better. Like just a few minor tweaks could have
for sure,
completely changed that experience. But when young boys are watching this and seeing that it's okay to do that, then that's my issue, Or then
true.
It's like when like women are literally telling you, "Don't fight my battles for me. I can do this." And like, "Oh, darling, it's okay. Oh, sweetheart, like here, let me give this to you." And like just manipulating them literally into positioning them to where they want them to be, so that way they can then take advantage of them and dominate them. That didn't happen in the next movie, which is cool. Like I liked the next movie for that not being the main plot. Is just the whole plot couldn't have happened without Sonya being on that boat.
Exactly.
So, but she had the least lines, and she was there to just kind of like encourage dudes.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yes. I do think that like the redemption of her killing Kano was gorgeous. And again, we've already talked about that.
But that happened so early on, too. Her story's done.
Yeah, they ended that way too early, I think, especially if they were establishing that, like, this whole Kano gaslighting Sonya moment as a subplot, and then, like, 35 minutes in, he's dead, and she's now just like, I have achieved full success. I am a full, complete character. My arc is over. And then it's like, no, you're going to be damsel. And she's like, what? What do you mean?
Also, take down that hair, and we're going to take your shoes away. You don't need those, actually.
Yeah, we're actually going to give you this, like, chest plate with chains. And can we have those shoes, please? Thank you.
Should we talk about Raiden for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me scroll down. Okay.
I forgot he was even in this. Until this I completely forgot that he existed for a sec.
I thought that like my perception of this film going into this was very different than what the actual movie was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I remember like, oh yeah, Raiden's there and he's helping out and he's doing the thing. And like, Raiden's not there at all. He like essentially like guilts Kang into fighting in the tournament, like just being a manipulative asshole to him about literally everything, like calling him a fake and all of this stuff too. And I'm just like, damn, okay. But like literally he's not in it. He's in it like for like a couple times just to tell the humans that they fucked things up and like they're not ready. And it's like, wait, but wasn't your job to get everybody ready for this tournament? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. It feels, I mean, obviously just the casting is problematic in general, but also like because the character is kind of this already obviously problematic trope. So on top of it, like casting it wrong, I'm like, does that like cancel it out? Because he's a white actor performing this like mystical I mean, obviously not, but yeah, he was kind of
that
useless.
Has a cult following, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, cool.
He was very useless in this. I mean, what was the only thing he really did was like intimidate the baddies in that one thing when he's on the staircase. I think that's like it. And is that it?
And literally just told people like, what do you say? He said, the only one that can defeat you is your own fear. And he's like told Johnny that he's afraid of being fake. He told King that he's afraid of his destiny. And then he told Sonya, which plays into everything that we were just talking about, and I forgot about this, that she's afraid to admit that she needs help. Insinuating, like, because we don't ever see her really do anything for herself. Insinuating that she is incapable. I forgot about that. That's not cute.
Yeah, they're trying to equate the characterization of her big air quotes stubbornness as a flaw, or this need to be autonomous as a flaw.
Yes.
That's funny.
Yes. And then like later on he shows up and he's like, you have learned all I can teach you. And literally all I can, like, I stopped the movie and I turned to Dave and I was like, what did he teach them? He didn't teach them anything. He literally didn't do anything. Like, how, like, why is he taking credit for all of this? And he's like, to Kang just being like, oh, well, I can't be there all the time. I can't help all of these people. And you're just like, well, but literally, what are you fucking doing? Like, because you're not getting ready for this, like, thing that is, like, your sole job as the protector of the Earth realm, right? Like, you've just been like, peace out. I'm okay. And what is he even doing?
Nothing.
What do you think Raiden does on his days off? Because clearly, like, that's every day. What would you speculate he does?
Probably just like sits at a coffee shop looking mysterious, waiting for somebody to come up and ask him what he does for a living. And
ask
that's
him about
his job.
His hat or something.
Yeah, like I love your hat. Like lightning eyes. He was terrible. I really did forget he was in this movie. I do think it's just funny because like it adds to the silliness because it is very much like that. Like, I've taught you well. No, you didn't. Who are you? Like, where are you from? Hello. This is like, no.
Like if this were filmed as like a satire or like had like just a little bit more of those comedic beats, I'd be like, yes. Like this is a spoof.
That's what it feels like. Yes, 100%. Where it's like it really just feels so. It feels like almost like watching. Do you remember? Not Top Gun. Top Secret. Do you remember watching Top Secret?
No, I never watched it.
It's just like it's like the spoofiness of like a scary movie, like all of those. Yeah, I spoof. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I learned about that in film class. I'm smart.
I know these things.
I know these things. Also, did you love that they were like, this fight only happens once in a generation, and it was like 5 years ago or something, or like a couple years ago? Yeah. I thought that was so funny. I was like, wait, when is this happening? What's like, your brother just died, and now coincidentally there's another Mortal Kombat?
Mm-hmm. They're just going for it. He's honestly, he's impatient. He wants to take over the Earth as soon as possible, so he's like, fuck it. Special edition Mortal Kombat. Let's go.
Sudden death. Yeah. This movie was silly and fun, but
this movie was
a little bit messy.
100%. Could not agree with you more. Should we do the next one?
Yeah, dude, let's do the next one.
Okay, let's rock and roll.
Martial arts master Hanzo goes to fetch a pail of water for his wife and children, but comes back to find them dead by the hands of his rival Sub-Zero. Unfortunately, Hanzo is no match against Sub-Zero's powers, but vows revenge on him prior to descending into hell. A few moments later, Raiden finds the remnants of the destruction along with one of Hanzo's children who is still alive and takes him to the orphanage. Several hundred years later, Mortal Kombat is still raging, and Shang Tsung decides that this time he's going to kill Earth's champions before they even reach the tournament, so he wins by forfeit. Pan over to washed-up fighter Cole Young, who is at the end of his career and taking whatever matches he can get to support his family, who just so happens to also meet and be attacked by Sub-Zero, who is back to destroy yet another family. Oh no!
Wouldn't you know it, the Young family is saved by Jax, a human with a dragon marking that apparently means they were chosen to fight in Mortal Kombat. And OMG, Young has one too! Young leaves his family behind and goes to find Sonya Blade, who has pieced together the entire plot of the movie, but who herself doesn't have a dragon marking. Oh! Literal piece of shit Kano is there too. Some more fights happen, and the group makes their way to Raiden's temple where they train with Liu Kang and Kung Lao to unlock their arcana. More stuff happens and Kano switches sides and everybody fights. The good guys win in the end, Sonya gets her mark, and Earth is saved from pre-Mortal Kombat.
Okay, that's not just me, right? They didn't actually do Mortal Kombat.
No, that was so before I watched this, that was the only thing I knew about this was the fact that this is kind of just like the introductory stories. They're just introducing the characters. They never actually get to Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, okay.
Which
I wanted to make sure that I was correct because I was just like wait, but there's a fight, like how?
So my biggest problem with this, just from because again, it's silly. Like the concept is silly. It's supposed to be this gratuitous, silly game that's like literally intending to be like so up its own ass in gratuitous violence. Like that's the whole point of the game. So it's essentially just this silly, shitty game. I feel like this movie tried to do the thing that a lot of current movies are doing, which is ground it in a real way and tie them all together in like a neat little bowed package where it's like, here's why Jax has robot arms, and here's why Kano got his eye, and here's why this, where it's like, it's trying to be too, like, maybe, because I like backstories, but maybe I was just soured on it.
There was too many, there's too many characters, and they tried to set each one up without doing any of them justice.
Yeah.
Also, just real quick to backpedal on what you were saying about like the violence in the video games and stuff like that, like over gratuitous and stuff like that. Did you hear about the most recent Mortal Kombat that came out? How like the game developers, like some of them had to go to therapy because they had PTSD from having to render and like having to like animate and render these things, and because they had to get them right, they had to watch these absolutely grotesque videos and study these photos of like just real actual brutal violence to get that. So like thinking about that in terms of the gratuitous violence here, right? Like we see where it started in the 1990s, where it's kind of silly and fun and everything, to then take it to another extreme, right? And this is where we got. So even if it was just supposed to be fun, it just was taken to this extreme. And, you know, the women characters didn't get any better at all. They got way worse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so having that context going into this was really gross and awful,
It's rough. I mean, even watching this, there were a couple moments, like, in the same way, like, playing one of the later iterations of the game, there are some times where I'm, like, kind of flinching. Like, ooh, like... And
somebody had to spend fucking hours on those animations and watch like, actual videos of like gross things happening and has PTSD from that. Like that's
I didn't
awful.
know that. That's fucked. Like what a shit. Like cuz it's really it's effective. It'll fuck you up. Like just being exposed to that even in a way that's like you're detached from it and it's like bigger quotes scientific or whatever version of this you're doing it for. It's still going to affect you. Like you're still going to have your body, your brain's going to see this and react and be like, oh, this is bad. This is jarring. This is traumatizing. I shouldn't see this. So like,
but then that's literally your job.
But it's literally, that's crazy. I didn't know that. But I mean, just in general with this game, like even sometimes, like it wasn't awful. There were a couple moments in this movie where I was like, ooh, when they're in the thing and his hat turns into the buzzsaw, which again, that's in the game. I know that fatality's in the game.
Oh yeah, these are all their finishing moves.
Yeah, which is like I love. Yes, and it looked really good. But Jesus fucking Christ. Like,
yeah.
Even playing like one of the later iterations where I forget what version of it, but like everybody, like the whole vibe is like X-ray. Like, so when somebody's getting punched, it has an X-ray of their face and you see their like bones breaking underneath their skin.
Yes.
Like that was sort of the implemented like new twist on the violence of the game. So like even sometimes in those games, like this, like the whole point is for us to be like, ooh, fuck, like, ooh, that's crazy. That's a rough one. Like, or it's so sillily gratuitous that, and that's like the point. I think, not to say that like, I do think that it's at a certain point, it's like, hey, when's enough? Because like, I mean, that was the base. Like it was supposed to be kind of like silly and like over the top. That was the point. But like, at what point are we just like, we don't have to keep adding a 10 to each one of these iterations.
At what point is this damaging to the people that are making and consuming the game?
I know, because sometimes it really is too much. Like, ugh. Like, I mean, even watching, and in this movie, even watching Jax get his arms frosted and like broken, I was like, ugh, ew, like, Jesus Christ. Like, I don't like that. Like, what the fuck? That's too much. You know what? I just, ugh.
Yeah.
I did like the visual or sort of the special effects.
Just I think they did a great job. Yeah.
They looked great. It really amplified the violence, obviously, which was the intent. But even like the moment when Jax has his shotgun and he shoots Sub-Zero and Sub-Zero just freezes the gun as the shotgun goes off. That was so
fucking cool.
And you see all the pellets like going out slowly, and then he just uppercuts the gun and breaks it because it's so cold. I was like,
and then the daggers, like the blood dagger and the ice dagger and shit like that. I was like, like the way that they did some of the things in this movie were just like so cool and so smart. Like good use of those powers, like using the flare to like mark that
on Reptile.
So good.
See, like, and those elements of like just choreography and like all, for the most part, all of the fight sequences, I was like, oh, this is engaging. I'm loving this. Like, yes. Whereas the first one was very clearly like, this is going to be a little bit of dialogue getting from one fight to the next fight to the next fight, emulating sort of a gameplay style storytelling, which I think worked well. I think it was great. Again, we're not here for the dialogue. We don't give a shit. The whole vibe, the whole point of this is like the fighting. That's the base. We're going to scooch past it. Gorge. This one kind of did the same thing, but it just felt like really redundant and meaningless cutscenes. Like
it felt, it felt to me like the acting was just really bad, so I was taken out of it a lot. So, okay. First, I had no expectations going into this, right? I was like, I don't know what I'm fucking in for. And the opening scene with Hanzo, like, which I love that actor too, right? So like with him and his family and like the way that was shot, the kind of pacing of that, you know, like you see like the gardening tool, right? Like the close-up of that, the setting up of this character and Sub-Zero and what they are to each other and their whole fight and everything. Fucking loved this. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be so fucking interesting. Like, I'm so here for this. And then to just like, basically that was like its own short. You know, like really had nothing to do like other than like this is the descendant of Hanzo, like had nothing to do, or like even like the pacing and the tone and everything were just so different. It was really jarring for me. So that made like all of the acting and all of the dialogue and all of the lines and everything just seem so redundant, so silly, so out of place and so bad acted. Like I'm like, okay, you made some really cool choices in that first one, right? Like the setting up of Sub-Zero versus Scorpion. Cool. Like, let's do this. But then like all of that storytelling that they had, like the level of storytelling that I expected after that scene was just like fucking thrown out the window.
Like 100%. Because, and to me, I'm like, at least in the other one, there is a level of, I know that these in-betweens are going to be bad. You've already established a precedent as far as like the dialogue's not great, the acting's not great. We know this. But this movie tried so hard to be of the world and to be this serious, dramatic piece of like, it felt just like so. It's a problem I have with the sort of
The
lot of
dialogue
like
was so bad.
the hyper realizing of sort of these not so real properties. Like it doesn't have to be of the world. Like you don't have to make it. You don't have to Christopher Nolan Batman it. Like you don't have to do that. You know what I mean?
You don't have to explain yourself.
You don't have to explain it. And to me, the bad acting, like I think in general, the acting is probably good if it was edited right or directed a little bit different. But because it's such a
Sonia
silly,
was bad.
I mean, 100% could just be terrible. But it really did feel like everything felt so out of place because of that. Because it was like, we don't need this realistic version of anything. Like the dichotomy of this silly idea with this hyper realized, grounded acting, it didn't mesh. It like just the whole movie, it kept. The acting would take you out of the story of this because maybe the lines were bad or somebody's weird take on this, or like, why did he get out of the car? Why is that happening? Okay. But then the fight is gorgeous and you're like, yeah, okay, this is the movie. This is what we're here for. And then it's like back to the young family. And like, it seemed it was all over the place.
To me, the sets also really took me out of it because they felt so simple and they felt so, they didn't feel like you said, they're trying to make this a fully realized world to make it grounded in our world, but the sets felt like sets. They didn't feel like there was any life in them. And the temple was boring as shit.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't care. Like this, there is nothing visually interesting about this. Where the first one was over the top and cartoony and fun, and like a lot of those shots were taken from like the video games, and so maybe like these are like the later video games. I never really played them past like 1 or 2. So like. Cool, but also it just is more boring. Like there's nothing stimulating. There's nothing stimulating about the dialogue, about the actors, about the story, about the scenes. So literally the only thing that is stimulating in this moment is the fight scenes. Like, yeah.
Truly all you had to do was throw them in this like toxic lime green environment where there's slime oozing down the walls and it's so vibrant and so silly. There's like a million monsters in tubes just like throughout this green laboratory. Have one throwaway dialogue that's like, oh, well, Dr. Luna decided to abandon his project and, oh no, you happen to be in there. That's all I need. Literally, that's it. Tell me just what happened and why we're here, and I'll believe it. It doesn't have to be like we're in an alley and we just happen to go into this warehouse because warehouses exist. It's like literally break through a wall, land in a fucking Barnum and Bailey's circus tent. I don't give a shit. But just be like, oh, have somebody in the background be like, oh, the circus is in town. Perfect. That's all the justification I need. We're in this cool environment. Now it's time to fucking fight. So fight. That's all. That's all this movie is here for.
Well, and in the same way that like they were trying to ground this in reality, right? Like so like they went over and like tried to over explain Mortal Kombat 2, where it's like now there's this thing with like the dragon birthmark, and then so you're destined to fight, but also if you die, then that person gets your mark, right? Okay. And then like there's this whole like, I mean, the other one was definitely about dominance and power and cyclical violence and all of this kind of stuff, right? Like just these very toxic male ideas of what it means to like who is worthy and reinforcing like all of those kinds of things, right? And this one really doubled down on that, where you like, you know, there was this emphasis on your arcana and getting that and your inner power, right? But you had to be like pushed to the edge to do that. You had to suffer so much. Like pain was the ultimate catalyst to get you to realize your full true power. So that just took like that first idea and just like fucking doubled down in like a really gross way to me. And then like you have to commit physical violence in order to fully, like, in order to reach your arcana, which is like essentially like to really know yourself, right? And to be really in touch with yourself, you have to commit violence, right? And if you don't like commit violence, if you don't know your arcana, you're a liability and you're worthless. So like that's Sonia's whole thing. She finds out about all those things. She wants to be in the cool kids club, right? Because she feels worthless without it. And when she goes to the temple, even though she's helping or whatever, they literally just keep telling her how she's worthless and she can't train and she is of no use until she has that symbol, you know? Yeah. So like
it's like the this isn't the blood of a champion, or like she doesn't smell like she belongs here, and you're like, what is happening? What is all that?
And like the way that you earn any of that is by like death and pain, and not by actually practicing. Like, so these people have to suffer a little bit and then they're just incredible fighters and they can do all of this, you know? But like, there's also like this quote where it's like combat takes intelligence, where they're trying to make combat seem smarter than it actually is, you know? But like most of it is just putting each other down and like rewarding toxic masculinity, you know, like where Kano is the one to get his power first, because he is of course the most masculine and the most toxic and the most like outspoken and violent, both emotionally and physically, right? So he's rewarded and he like calls everybody a pussy, and I was like, okay, that's cool, cute, and of course like any good toxic male, he turns his back on his like quote unquote friends or whoever, and then like the whole rest of the story happens. But like, so it's just that showing of like and reinforcing the need for violence and the need for that to exist in order for you to know who you are, you know? And like Sonia in this one too, she was like, she wasn't even like a real person, like she didn't have anything feminine about her. She was very male coded. And like they went into like this whole thing where again she's the keeper of knowledge, so she literally has like this 5-minute dialogue where there's like fucking way too much information about Mortal Kombat, about this fucking base that she has, and that she's a military leader and she's a veteran and this whole thing. But like her whole thing is that she's just not good enough, and she wants to prove, like, even though she's obviously very accomplished, she needs to prove that she's good enough, that she's like man enough in order to get this, right? And she's still sexualized. Like fucking Kano like is still like, oh, like asks her like basically what color her pubic hair is, and she like fucking hits him. And then like the whole thing about this is like you get the tattoo and then you have to unlock your arcana. So cool, she finally kills Kano, but then she suddenly is really cool at fighting and she doesn't have to unlock her arcana. And is that just because she's suffered so much as being a woman in the world? Like fucking whatever. Like I was very bored with all of that and I hated it. Can we talk about how much Kano just wanted to talk about his nutsack? Like, did you notice how many fucking lines, how many times he talked about his nutsack?
And that to me, like, I get that Kano is supposed to be this hyper masculine, hyper machismo,
fucking racist,
chauvinist, misogynist, racist pig, like, who is also like a child. He's this childish man who is just gross, has no ethics. Blah. He's sweaty all the time. That's the vibe. I mean, even in this, I don't know. I wasn't as impressed with the character in this one. Like, he was fine, but it felt like I'm acting like a bad boy, and here's me being a bad boy. And I was like, okay, like, you don't have to keep telling us you're a bad boy. Like, just be a bad boy if you're a bad boy. Great.
He calls Kung Lao. He calls Kung Lao's hat a sombrero, and he calls him princess in the same breath. And I'm like, did you really need to like go through all of this? Because like Kano arguably has the most lines and the most character development in the same way that Johnny Cage did in the last one, right? Whereas Johnny Cage was like made laughable and stuff. This guy sure is like an obvious bad guy, but like still he's rewarded first before anybody else. And he's like, yeah, you piece of shit. I got mine. Fucking suck my nuts. And I'm like, you're so gross. Like, I don't want to ever hear about Kano's nutsack ever again. I don't care.
I mean,
No.
unfortunately, I do, and that is the problem with
Well, but
society.
Kano from the first movie, yeah. Did
Yeah.
you like Kano from this one?
No, he was also
Okay.
not as cute. Like, and again, I don't want to
Exactly.
I'm not trying to fully sexualize this character, but he's scummy, so just fuck him. Who cares? He was not as cute as in this one. Just base level was not as cute. I was not as into him. Also, at least in the first one, yes, he's a scumbag. Yes, he sucks, but he's not as bad or as blatantly childish and bad as this one, where he's just here's a racist epithet. Here's some ignorant bullshit. Anyways, my asshole. Anyways, women are bad. And I'm I honestly, shut the fuck up. I'm so bored. This, I get you're supposed to be bad. I get it. Again. But I'm so bored with this, overproduced, pompous badness that this version of Kano had. That, by that dinner scene when he's pass me the dumpling or whatever, I was just I'm tuning you out. I don't fucking care. I'm so bored of you.
It was too much of him.
It was too much of him in the movie. Yes,
We had
but also
many other characters that I was cool. Let's talk about Jax. Let's talk about some of the only woman that was good was Sonya, and the bad guys had four. Four women where we don't get to know anything except for they look cool as hell, but the wife and the
Katana
daughter who were just
sick.
nothing. They were the young family was the most nothing of anybody in this whole movie. And they're supposed to be centered as or Cole specifically is supposed to be centered as he's Hanzo's descendant. There's this whole thing. So homeboy has to forsake his own family because century old unresolved trauma that he doesn't even know about, right? So okay. And I like the idea of him being able to use energy that is cast negatively towards him and use that against people. That is fucking cool. That is the best part about Black Panther's suit, right? That.
Oh yeah.
I love that idea, right? But then so he's bad at fighting. He's a nothing character. There's nothing to him. There's nothing to his family. And suddenly he becomes their leader when he didn't earn anything and he didn't do anything to show that he's a good leader or that he's capable in anything, And Liu Kang is bad at, he's oh, good, you're all here. He's supposed to have found all the champions this whole time and just didn't, And then we had to give Liu Kang a tragic backstory. And then Raiden is also a piece of shit that there's nothing to. And Shang Tsung is also a nothing character that's just the gods mean nothing. Let's kill him before Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at all of these characters, literally the one that is the least qualified to be a leader is Cole. Why are you taking direction from him?
It's also, I feel like you said, nothing is really earned. And I mean, this is also, and I mean this very specifically or earnestly, emblematic of the diminishing of that sort of skill building or any sort of moments where we see somebody getting better and sort of trial by error for that sort of growth. Because, I mean, Sonya steals the fucking birthmark. Okay, so is it a birthmark or that whole vibe where it's you don't really have to earn it. You can just get it, and sometimes it's just given to you. There is no sort of rhyme or reason behind it. And again, who even is Cole Young? Why is he... Why... He's just as confused as everyone else. Why is he suddenly the hero?
Also, Sonya literally was in charge of her own army special forces unit and stuff like that. They went out of their way to say that she did that for 8 years or something. Yeah. And even then, even after she gets her marker, I mean, she still is not allowed to utilize her experience. Now it's just ooh, I can hang with the boys now. And I'm you suck. I hate you.
This movie was not good. And it's because it really should. You threw way too many characters in there to try to make this, I don't know. It was visually interesting just by way of colors and fights and CG, but it was honestly so fucking boring. I was so really, I was just so bored the whole time, and none of the motive made sense. I didn't connect. I couldn't connect with any character. Like, how could I? Each character got 2 seconds to talk.
Even the main characters and stuff, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
It's just like, oh, I'm in this room. Wait, Sub-Zero's here. No, wait, Scorpion's here to save me. I'm going to run. It's like, okay. And then we're in a fight. And I'm like, this is great because this is what I was looking for. But I don't think it worked.
There wasn't any real substance to it.
No.
And everybody was like kind of like a footnote of a character. There was just nothing to this movie.
Yeah.
So.
Messy.
Yeah. Very messy. I wanted to like it more than I did, but
I did too.
But I'm a little bit disappointed.
The visuals really knocked it out of the park. They were gorge. They were gorgy. Even that extra blood was gorgeous. I mean, some of it was cringy, obviously, because it's brutal AF. But
it's brutality.
Brutality.
Oh, wait. Yeah. No, that's not even a thing.
Because they
okay.
did that same thing in this one too, and I liked it less. Mm-hmm. Where it's like fatality or like,
it didn't feel like anything fun about the first one, right? Like we've already talked, like all of that was taken out, and like that's how movies are now when they're remakes of like a property, right? It's like the dark, edgy, gritty. But like if you don't know how to make something dark, edgy, and gritty and also compelling, why are we doing this? Like if you had just made this silly and fun, sure, give me 20 characters. That's fine, whatever. Like it just felt like it didn't know what it wanted to do, and it didn't know the story that it wanted to tell. It wanted to do the fight scenes, which is great. Don't give us as much dialogue. Don't give us as many characters. Like, we don't need this. Like, you know.
It really felt like Super Smash Brothers, the movie, in the way that it's like, how do you write a story around that? You can't. It's character introduction and fighting. That's all we need. The story's not going to be good no matter how you try to implement any sort of weaving narrative between these characters. It will not work. It didn't work.
Yes. Yeah, and that's why I'm always weary about video games becoming films, because it's like, well, how do you, especially like because there's two different types, right? There's the kind where there's literally no story like this, right? Where you just literally have to kind of weave these characters and these sets and these lines into some sort of narrative, right? Okay. But then there's also the video games where it is just too much and too expansive, and you're not going to be able to do it any sort of justice. So this has to be like a TV show if you're going to try. We'll see how Last of Us comes. Like I'm excited tentatively for that, because I think that might be the first decent iteration of like a video game brought to a screen,
I know I haven't seen it in a while, but I do remember really liking the first Resident Evil movie.
Okay, I do want to do Resident Evil because I did like that one too when I saw it.
We should do that.
Hell yeah!
But I'm wondering too if it is like a nostalgia thing, because I really just liked it at the time uncritically. Like, I wonder how that holds up, because I mean, Mila Jovovich, incredible, and that all of those moments, I remember them being pretty good. But again, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I know that like it went off the rails in terms of like it wasn't really like in the later films that had basically nothing to do with the video game anymore.
Oh, it got wild, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, I need to have like a Resident Evil marathon.
That would be fun. I mean, we could do Resident Evil. But how would we we'll
no, because the new one is coming out. They're rebooting Resident Evil.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it has not come out yet, but they are completely rebooting it.
Oh, gorge. Then that's going to be a must.
I love it. I fucking love it.
They're making the content for us.
They really are. They just love us so much. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this movie just because there was just nothing.
Yeah, I'm honestly good with that also.
All right. We went and witnessed a couple Mortal Kombats.
We went to the outer world and have returned.
Eric, what did you think of the 1995 version? Who was it for?
The 1995 version was truly and earnestly for fans of the video game. I think that one was very emblematic of exactly what the video game was. It did a great job in bringing that fun silliness to the screen for those fans. It wasn't trying to reinvent anything. It knew the assignment. It turned in the assignment. It got a B-. You know what I mean? Like it knew exactly, like it succeeded. It was above expectation. Boom. I think it was for video game fans. Yeah. Who do you think this was for?
I think this was definitely for gamer boys. And yeah,
gamers,
exactly.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, so
I'm like fans of the video games. What would you call them? Oh gosh, I wish there was a word.
They were some gamer boys. They said they said fatality. Anyways, no, it was absolutely like seeing the characters that you love on the screen, and then seeing some of the levels that you play, like seeing the fighting, seeing like the finishing moves and stuff like that. Like, so cool. It's just like, oh, fuck yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
And like, you know, and then when you do that, when you go play the video game, it's like, hell yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's exactly who this was for. And it fucking delivered.
It did. I think it was. I mean, again, I had never seen it before. I think it was like the perfect. It was just so fun.
Did you like it?
I did. I really liked it. I thought it was very silly and just like, it's like the best all nonsense, no nonsense movie, where like it's to the point. It gets where it needs to go. It gets where it needs to go. It just does it. It boom, 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 moves on. But the entire time, it is very just like, what fucking who cares? Whatever. We're just doing it. Just go. Next scene. Go to the next scene. You know what I mean? It just it felt very. It was a good time. I'll say that.
Yeah, even for all of the shit that I just talked on it, I did like it. I had a good time with it because it is a very nostalgic film for me for various reasons. I was really surprised on this rewatch that there was so little Sub-Zero and Scorpion in there. Because I feel like my perception of what it was is, I mean, again, like you just need to re-experience something to correctly remember things in context. But yeah, I still really liked it. I still thought it was incredibly fun. It was so silly. It was so over the top. Do I want justice for Sonya and just women in general? Because there were only, count them, 2 women in that whole movie out of like fucking everybody there. Even like the extras or people sitting at the tables and stuff like that. Just 2. Would I like a version of this where the women weren't objectified in this way? Yeah, absolutely. If they were not, this would be a perfect film. Fucking wonderful. Yeah. So good. Love it. And the representation, obviously. Like, both of those things, fix those 2 things. This is what I wanted the 2021 version to be. I wanted it to be this movie with women that are strong and have their own thing and better representation. That's all I wanted. I wanted 100%. This whole thing fucking carbon copy, fucking beautiful, 100%.
Yeah.
But I didn't get it. So.
No.
Yeah. But yeah, so I liked this. Will I watch it again? Yeah. Yeah, I will watch it again. What about the 2021 version? Was it new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? Has the story evolved with today's ideals?
It was just new because it was very much of the let's make this IP, this dark, gritty, realized story about like family. I don't know. Like, it was interesting in that regard, and I guess new, or it was new in that regard. I don't think it was very interesting at all. I think it like just did a disservice to exactly what the first one was. I think it just missed the mark. I wasn't that interested in it. The only thing I was interested in was the visuals. I think that was stunning. I think it looked amazing. You can't really say it was regressive, but I also can't really say it was progressive. I mean, in its representation, yes, it was progressive. But outside of that, it was kind of just the same. Just in terms of everything. I think I don't know, it's so hard because the first one has so little substance that I'm trying to like
I feel like the first one had more was more stylized and more fun and knew exactly where it was
Yeah.
and what it was. Whereas this one, I feel like it had a true identity crisis. I think it was new in the sense that it was different.
Yes.
I think it was super boring. I don't think it was the same at all. I think it had an identity crisis. I think it just didn't know what it was or what it wanted to be. And I really, it was progressive, like we said, in the way that the representation was better, but regressive in like Sonia's story was even worse than it was in the first one, and like there was no progress made by anybody, and like just the overall narrative of like you have to suffer and hurt in order to unlock your true self, and only then are you actually worth something, and the only way to do that is through violence, like I think that's incredibly regressive. And I didn't think it was such a snoozer and such a frustrating snoozer.
It was a frustrating snoozer for sure. Absolutely.
Who do you think this was for?
Studio execs hoping to cash in on some nostalgia, I'd say. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, who was it for besides them? Like, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I feel like it's not good enough to be like, wow, this is like really great for the IP of this franchise or for this thing. Like, they were just trying to cash in on a nostalgia wave. Like most of these things, it is a cash grab. So I think at the end of the day, it was for the studio execs. Who do you think it was for?
I 100% agree. 100%. This is a cash grab. Because, I mean, if anybody really gave a shit about this, they would have looked at the script and been like, man, this is shit. We can fix this. Because, the fights don't, you just have to say, insert fight, and then, here's some dialogue, and then insert fight, and then here's some more dialogue. And the person choreographing the fights can be completely different. Those don't have to be narratively, sure, you need to know who's the winner or how the fight is concluded, right? But it felt like this was just kind of an outline, where it was like, oh yeah, and then we want this and this and this. And then these are the things about Mortal Kombat. Oh, we'll just make Sonya say that. That's fine. Oh, and then we're going to have this. Oh, the Arcana, unlocking the Arcana thing. Okay, yeah, cool. And then, they accidentally gave everybody the rough draft rather than giving them the finished product.
Yes.
It felt like the first draft of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from a story perspective, without a doubt, this was a first draft idea for how to make a new Mortal Kombat movie, without a doubt.
Did you like it?
No. Again, the fights were cool. The fights were gorgeous, actually. You know what? The fights were great. The fights, gorgeous, love them. As a whole, no, I didn't like the movie. I thought it was pretty boring. Did you like it?
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like anything about it. I thought it was bad and messy, and I could not understand why they made some of the choices that they made. Yeah. And it felt like there could have been intent, and it could have been good. So I'm just I'm very mad. I'm very, if you want to do a dark, gritty reboot, that's fine, but you have to have a direction. You have to have a story. You have to make this shit worth my time, because I just don't need to see other people's trauma or hear about it, because we didn't even see people's backstories. We just kind of heard about it secondhand from oh, I was an orphan and then I killed this guy that was selling orphans and that's how I got my mark.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I understand that's traumatizing. That was all of Liu Kang's 5 minutes on screen was him talking about this, and it was just people talking. It was boring that we didn't see fucking anything other than some cool ass fight scenes. But you know what? This could have been a YouTube miniseries.
It could have,
and I would have ate that shit up. That would have been super, super, super fine.
Just give us a long, give us a super cut of the fight scenes, and that's it. That'd be great. That'd be gorgeous.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Wow.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes and follow us on social media.
Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/NOTstalgia, where you can get a whole nother show of us called the NOTstalgia podcast, where we just talk about random shit for very cheap. You will really love it. Be a patron.
And we just recently restructured a little bit to make it easier to support us, and so you get more stuff out of it. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Editing is by Danny Barkley. And thank you again for listening. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical. Goodbye. Bye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Jake.
And we are the band Lousy Advice from the Lousy Advice Podcast.
Come listen as we draft artist and genre-centric best of lists.
With the help of our closest friends.
These lists are canon.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
From Misfits to Cher.
Green Day to Gaga.
Or Pup to Paramore.
Listen to the Lousy Advice Podcast now, or else.
Stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget that we are the band Lousy Advice, and this is our podcast, the Lousy Advice Podcast.
The Lousy Advice Podcast?
The Lousy Advice Podcast. Podcast.